Hi folks, welcome to my channel and day 24 of the 2018 Inktober challenge. Today the word prompt is chop and I've chosen to paint a great spotted woodpecker chopping away at a tree. And for this video I thought I'd try out the bokeh technique for the background, which is a really cool blurry effect I've seen achieved with watercolours, but I wanted to see if I could do the same with ink. However, this isn't something I've ever attempted before, so I tried out a few methods first, which I thought I'd share with you. If though you want to skip this part of the video, you can fast forward to the actual woodpecker inking and I'll put a timestamp below to that part. So I thought I'd test out three tools I've got to try lifting circular areas of ink from a wet background and see which works best. So I've got a makeup blender, a round ink stamp and a small round sponge. On each of the examples I started by wetting my paper first before dropping in some coloured ink and then trying to lift some of the ink to give the effect of an out of focus camera shot. The makeup blender seemed to work okay, but the results for the other two items were pretty disappointing. I even tried dropping clean water onto the wet ink but didn't want the starry effect, and I also tried lifting with paper towel, which did work, but it was difficult to get the circular shape I wanted. Now the way I think you would do this in a watercolour situation is to apply the paint on a wet surface like I did, but then wait for it to dry, before then adding white ink or paint over the top, which would blend with the colours underneath to get your nice bokeh effect. But with ink I didn't think this would work, as ink, unlike watercolour, doesn't reactivate when wet, so you'd end up with pure white circles instead of nice light coloured blurry ones. But nonetheless I decided to go with the makeup blender and do the best I could, and at the end of the day experimenting with different techniques is what Inktober's all about. Now looking over the video footage again, this technique did seem to work really well when I just added one colour. So when I just added the dark green and then lifted off with a makeup sponge, it did give a really nice result. But I was really keen to add in more than one colour, and I think in doing so probably lost a bit of the effect. So what I did then do is go over with another layer of the dark ink just to try and blend it in a little bit more. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to turn out, but once I'd done this and left it to dry, it did seem to blend together a little bit better and look okay. Then it was time to ink in the woodpecker, and I started by outlining his eye first with a black Copic multiliner and then adding in some blue and black ink to fill in the pupil. Next I started work on the head of the woodpecker using neat black ink and the wet on dry method mostly to fill in the darkest feathers. Using quite a dry brush really helped to give the illusion of light wispy feathers around the bird's neck area, but I added a bit more water moving down the wing before changing over to my small size 0 paintbrush for the tail feathers. So using this tiny brush wasn't to particularly render the individual feathers at this point, more just to make sure I left some of the white of the paper to add some contrast and a really bright effect. And once I was done with the black ink, I then started to add some brown as well as yellow ochre to the wings and around the front of the woodpecker's face, because although these feathers are white, they were slightly in shadow, with the light source coming from the left hand side. And the same applied for the chest feathers, so instead of leaving them just white, I did add some pale yellow ochre again as well as some diluted blue ink. And then it was time to go onto those beautiful bright red feathers and some neat red ink, which I just loved. I loved adding this part. And so once I'd painted in most of the bird, I then moved on to the tree trunk, and I really didn't want to get too bogged down with detail on this part, but equally I didn't want to spoil the painting by doing a sloppy job on the tree, so I tried to play it a bit loose using the wet on wet technique and didn't worry too much about copying exactly the tree bark from my reference picture. In between layers of the tree trunk, I did work on the woodpecker's feet, just using black ink in various concentrations, and then switched between adding finishing touches to the bird and playing around with the tree bark effect until I was happy with the result. I also added quite a lot of shadow on the tree bark from the woodpecker just to help with the realism as well. On the whole though, I'm really pleased with how this painting turned out, and I did have a lot of fun experimenting with the bokeh technique, and I can't wait to try it out again, but I think I will try it with watercolour next time. I do think I could have got a better result today just by sticking with a monochrome background, so maybe that's something to practice with ink, but I do like how the background makes the woodpecker really stand out quite well. So if this technique is something that you've tried before or know well, then please do drop any hints, tips or comments in the box below, as I would love to hear them. This is definitely a technique that I am going to be trying out again once Inktober's finished probably, and I would really like to know if anyone's got any advice or suggestions for getting the best results with it. So just now finishing off some details on that tree bark and loosely putting it in, not worrying too much about copying that reference photo, but hopefully getting a fairly realistic result. So do let me know what you think of this painting, and if you do like it then don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment and subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon as well if you don't want to miss out on future videos. So I really can't believe there's only 1 week left of this challenge. It seems to have gone really quickly, but thank you all so much for all your comments so far. It really does make a huge difference to my motivation and really is something that I look forward to at the end of every day. So keep them coming, I really appreciate it. So just coming to the end of the painting now, just doing some final touches to that tree bark before I then take the tape from around the outside. Now one thing I did find, which was a bit of a shame, was that some of that ink did bleed through underneath my tape today, but that was soon sorted and I did touch it up with some white paint and finish off just by doing some white feathers with my gel pen. So thanks for watching and I'll see you all again tomorrow.